you will see notable changes in the accuracy of your weather forecast within 5 years and most likely within 3 years. Weather forecasts are going to get very good very quickly because of AI.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's time for another episode of the Difference Makers podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jim Hoven, and today I have a really cool guest, and we're doing this video. We haven't done a video one in a while. We've been doing them kind of live and having a guest sitting next to me, but just because of this guy's schedule, the demands of what life gives through our skies and through our atmosphere, we got Chris Bianchi. He's a senior meteorologist at Channel 9 here in Denver, which is kind of the behemoth station. And it's the one that the others kind of want to look at and do their thing with. And so Chris is handling weather duties for them. And he's got such a great story. So I can't wait to dive into this and welcome Chris to the show. Can't wait to see what we're going to discuss today and how this is going to flow, my man.
I'm so excited to be here, Dr. Hoven. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to chat about hopefully something beyond how much snow is going to fall at my house. But we'll get into that too. I'm sure we'll get into all that. But it's really an honor to be here. Thanks for thinking of me to come on today.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you where we first met. It's been about a month or so now where we first met at the Colorado Rapids Burgundy Affair when the Rapids had their after season tournament. We were hoping or their banquet. We were hoping it was going to be the start of the playoffs, but just the way of the tiebreakers and things didn't quite work out. So you emceed that event. You did an incredible job. And so as we start out, people know you both here in Denver and basically worldwide because of TikTok and Instagram. They know you as kind of a weather specialist, but there's some great things in your story, starting with your love of sports. Can you just talk about soccer, number one, and how that plays a part of your life and sports in general? Because getting your backstory, I think, is going to be really fun.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks so much. So I think I think I've talked about it on air enough now that Channel 9 viewers will probably know that I'm a big sports fan. And I'll kind of start with my backstories. Basically, I'm born and raised on the East Coast. I grew up in the New York area, about 45 minutes outside New York in Connecticut, technically. But my parents are both originally from Chile. They immigrated here from Chilean a couple of years before I was born. They actually came to Colorado first, and I was a lifelong Colorado sports fan because they immigrated here. That was kind of the lifelong tie that I had to Colorado. But I guess the fun story is my parents didn't really care about American sports because they grew up in South America. So they didn't, American football, John Elway was completely unknown to them, that sort of thing. And I only say that to say that I kind of adopted it because I grew up speaking Spanish. And so I honestly struggled socially quite a bit through elementary school. And one of the times that I had to kind of get in with kids and make friends was through sports. And so I kind of adopted my love for sports. I've also played sports my entire life. I still play soccer. My parents, though, being from South America, soccer was always my number one love, still is, at least playing. I still love to play soccer, but both from a social aspect and from cultural aspect, I've been a big sports fan for a long time, and I really enjoy it. It's just kind of a break from things. I don't know. Especially it helps that all the Colorado sports teams are really good right now. So
Yeah,
I plug in a
super
podcast.
helpful.
Oh, it's so helpful. It's so fun. Honestly, I can listen to sports radio or sports podcasts and all day, and it's really fun. But I still play. I mean, had a lot of people come up to me the indoor league I play at out in Golden and be like, "Oh, Chris Bianchi, great to see you, man," and stuff like that. And obviously keep coming up and saying hi to me too. I love it. But yeah, anyways, that's hopefully my connection to soccer. And so I guess the final thing I'll say to that is that probably my number one, the thing that I really grew up with sports wise was my Chilean national soccer team. Cause that's from the age of 2, that's all I remember is my parents just plopping me in front of the TV being like, "You're watching this." And I'd be like, "Okay." So I watched them a lot, but fortunately they're not going to be in the World Cup this year. But anyways, that hopefully explains my love for sports. And I'm again, Broncos season ticket holder, die hard, Broncos, Rockies, Nuggets, Avs, Rapids fan.
That's so cool. And, you really perked my interest, Chris, when you talked about your parents originally coming to Colorado. How is it that they ended up in all of the United States? How did they end up in Colorado as their immigration stop? Did you have other family members here? Because that just seems like a pretty unusual stop versus one of the coastal cities when someone's coming in from, from one of the other countries.
Yeah, yeah. So my mom went to DU. She got a scholarship and she got one at DU. Um, she studied foreign relations there, international relations. I should probably know this. My mom was just here last week, so I can just see my mom wagging her finger at me. Um, um, but yeah, she studied international relations. Both my parents are diplomats by trade, so they grew up in South America, but they both bounced around their entire lives, but they're both originally from there. My mom's born and raised in Chile. My dad was actually born in England, but his dad was the ambassador from Chile to England. So my dad was born in England and spent most of his formative years there, but he's really Chilean because he was there because of his dad's work, if that makes sense. Um, and my parents, both my mom wanted to continue on the diplomacy route, so she chose DU because she got a scholarship here, and she also just revealed to me on her visit to Denver last week that she chose Denver specifically because she really wanted a clean break from Chile and her bringing, just not in a vindictive way or not in a mean way. She just wanted to start her own thing, start her own path. And the other schools that she got a scholarship to, her parents have friends there, and she was like, I don't want that. I want to just start my own thing and have a clean break. So it was actually the fact that she didn't know anybody here in Denver. That's the reason they came here. But my parents got married at DU. They honeymooned at Winter Park. In fact, they broke up in Chile and then they got back together in Keystone, I think it was. So
Wow.
we've had a lot of like Colorado connections, even though my parents are from 10,000 miles away from here, but
That's so
deep,
cool.
deep Colorado connections.
Man, you know what I love about that is that it does bring a sense of community and home. And I got to ask this. You mentioned earlier that you were a little socially outward, if you would, and not an outcast by any means, but because of Spanish being your first language. Today, I know that it is just such a unique advantage to be able to be bilingual in any two languages, particularly here in the metro area. We have such a great and growing Hispanic population and Spanish speaking population, no matter, Mexico or not. What did you find that to be a great advantage to you in your career and as you're growing up? Once you found your social connection by being able to communicate with kids through sport, was being bilingual was it a big benefit, or did you find it any kind of a hindrance at all?
It definitely is a benefit. My parents drilled it into me as a kid. They're like, you're gonna benefit from this as an adult. As a kid, lacking the context and just being a dumb kid, honestly, always saw it as a bit of a hindrance because I was in ESL till fifth grade. I I had I always kind of spoke kind of weird. My wife says I still say some weird things, but I mean, English, I think, and I speak 99% of the time in English now. So um, I don't think anybody would know that Spanish is my first language, but um, there's no doubt now that it is super useful. I've dabbled with the possibility of doing Spanish language forecasts again on my own on social media. The only challenge I have right now is that my mom living on the other side of the country, and things like that. I don't speak it as much as I should, so I still need to keep that a little bit fresher, and that's kind of on me. I used to listen more podcasts in Spanish, but I don't do that as much anymore. But anyways, I would say as a kid, I saw it as a hindrance, but clearly for now, it's definitely helped me get jobs. It's definitely helped me connect with people. Um, and when people find out that I speak Spanish, it's an immediate, launch point and connection point. So I'm very grateful that I do speak it. And I'm also very fortunate because I woke up speaking both English and Spanish in the sense that makes sense. Like I didn't have to work at it the way that most people do. And that's because of my parents. So I'm indebted to them for that. And I mean that sincerely. I've told them I'm very grateful of my wife who, took, she's from Indiana. She's taken years after years after years of Spanish lessons. And I speak it way better. And I don't mean that to denigrate my wife at all. I just say that I just woke up with it and I'm very lucky for that, if that
Dude,
makes
that is
sense.
so amazing. Like, because we have a lot of bilingual folks here at Ramos Law, that we see a lot of the Hispanic and Spanish speaking communities as patients, or sorry, clients here. And so one of the things that I wanted to do, I wanted to get good at Spanish, right? And so it was really important to me. So what would any knucklehead who wants to learn Spanish do? I'm going to sign up for the free version of Duolingo. That's going to be awesome. So I did 1,552 days in a row of Duolingo, and I am embarrassed by the little amount of actually conversational Spanish that I can speak. So the fact that you wake up with it every day, man, it is so cool. And so congratulations to you. I think that's amazing. As we shift gears a little bit, when it came to the weather being your passion and choosing that career path, what was it about the weather that drew you to it? Or how did you end up going into meteorology? I know you went to school for kind of broadcast journalism or broadcasting or something along those lines. Did something in college turn you towards that because of your love for sports? It would have made sense for you to go into sports casting and dabble in that, but the weather ended up winning your heart. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's a great question. So it actually kind of links in with my Spanish upbringing. So I don't even, my parents said that the only thing I would watch in English when I was in pre-K, because I think I grew up speaking Spanish, right? Talked about that at length now. First 2, 3 years, and my parents around the age of 3 or 4, like, okay, you need to learn English now because you're going to go into school here in America. And so they said I was pretty stubborn about learning English, and so they said the only thing I would watch in English, they said two things I would watch in English without complaining about it. One was Sesame Street. Number two was the weather. And so it goes back to when I was 4 years old and my parents said, and in fact, I still have a little piece of paper saying my first written words were partly cloudy. So um, it goes back a crazy long way. But it's, again, I feel fortunate in a number of respects, but, being given the gift of being bilingual without having to do anything for it, for one. Number two, having my lifelong passion, which is weather, going back to the age of 4 and really not knowing a day where I just didn't. I always knew what I wanted to do. I always wanted to be a meteorologist. Going into elementary and middle school, I would predict whether or not we'd have snow days. And in fact, in high school, I got to go on in the New York area. I got kind of popular with predicting whether or not we had snow days, and kids would do their homework or not do their homework based off what I said. I had one of those AOL homepage sites, and I would just write in there. And anytime we'd have a snow coming up, my parents' house would get inundated with calls when on our old landline or whatever before cell phones. And anyways, one of the TV meteorologists in New York happened to live in my town, and he saw on the front page of our daily paper that I was doing this, and he invited me to come in. So at the age of 16, 15, 16 years old, I went and did the weather on TV in New York at the ABC affiliate there. And so it goes back a really long way. I always had the sports weather thing, but it was always weather for me, just because uh, sports. I was never super good at sports, to be honest. I love sports. I still love playing sports. I was never, you know, a college level athlete or anything close to that. I just play for fun, but I felt like I needed that expertise. In my opinion, I felt like I needed that to go into sports. I know that that's not what I'm trying to get into, but my point was that weather was always the avenue I wanted to go down, and it goes back to the age of 4. And I'm a pretty lucky guy, who I don't know who gets to go back to the age of 4. My high school friends, for example, they'll still like hit me up and they'll be like, "It's still so cool, man. Like we know like you want to do this from when you were a little potato, like when you were." Miss Ben's elementary class, like, we knew you wanted to do this, and it's so cool to see you doing it. And I'm pretty lucky.
Did you have any weather mentors that you followed growing up? Obviously, this first person from New York invited you to come into the station 15, 16. Was there someone that you really looked up to, either in broadcasting in general or as like the Al Roker of weathermen or something that made you say, man, I want to be like that person, like that guy, like that gal? Was there any driving force that helped you really achieve excellence in your craft?
I've been very fortunate to have a number, and I should have mentioned him by name earlier. So the guy who invited me in is Bill Evans. He was the WABC TV, the ABC affiliate in New York, morning meteorologist for a number of years, and he was exceptionally kind to me. When he found out that I lived in the town and that I wanted to do this, he proactively reached out to me, which um, that's a pretty big deal. That's if you're a morning meteorologist at the number one television market in the country. You're Bill Evans. He was on Good Morning America quite a bit too. He would fill in. For him to proactively reach out to me was just like, I don't know. I remember I'll never forget that when I went in there. I was so nervous, but like excited, and I think it just about prompted tears, and my parents were so excited too. So Bill Evans, first and foremost, and he runs a radio station out on Long Island now. I've been in loose touch with him over the years as well, and he really helped me fine tune um, my forecasting skills, like kind of what I needed to do in order to get into the line of work. So Bill was really instrumental for me and helped me get into that position. But since then, there's been a number of people that really helped me out. So when I graduated from college, I graduated in 2009 from Boston University. I went for broadcast journalism. Kind of mentioned I had sports, weather. I've also, because of my parents being diplomats, I always had a big interest in international affairs. So I was always interested in current events, and um, I'm pretty interested in regular news too. And so I was pretty sure I wanted to do weather, but like I was like 95%. So I just went for broad journalism. I went to Boston University that way. And so I didn't get a point is I didn't get a meteorology degree, which if I had to do it over again, I probably should have done that. But because I had to get it afterwards, if that makes sense. So it kind of delayed the start of my broadcast journalism career, or at least in meteorology. And I kind of say that to say that I had to really get a little extra help after that point. And Les Shapiro, who passed away a few years ago, sadly, but a legendary sportscaster here in Denver, he took me on as a sports radio intern. And he was the one who guided me um, with a lot of help into the current position I'm in, because he was the one who helped me get a job at Weather Nation. I worked at Weather Nation for 6.5 years. I started as a producer and then worked my way on air. And Les was instrumental in doing that. And Les Shapiro, I'm sure you'll hear his name many times from, uh, maybe people my age, some millennials, people in their 30s now, because he took on so many people in that respect and was really, really helpful. And finally, he's now a competitor of mine, which is hilarious. But I interned for 2 years under Dave Frazier, the chief meteorologist at KDDR at Fox 31 here in Denver. And Dave, he probably won't care too much. I out him a little bit, but he kind of broke the rules to have me on for 2 years. We just got along so well. We still do. We still get lunch and everything, text all the time. But Dave took me on, showed me, you know, how he forecasts, all this stuff for 2 years, and really helped me get a job, and was um, exceptionally kind with me as well. So I've been very lucky. And I am overlooking a few people. I would say those would be the three main people who really helped me get to the position I'm in now. And I'm very fortunate for that, to have that sort of background.
I've found in if I look back at the life of any successful person and any person that's really moved mountains in whatever way in their roles, whether I've talked to them, met them, whatever life experience I've had, I know that mentorship plays a huge portion of that. So it's so cool for me to see you acknowledge those people and give them such love. It makes a big difference because at the end of the day, all of us are here to help each other, right? Up the mountain. As they say, we're all walking each other home in one way or another. So I'm glad that those people had that impact because now you're having an impact. I mean, I know that you've gone, and I don't know if this is a big thing. Maybe we can talk about this a minute. You have gone social, meaning you're not just the guy behind the camera doing the thing, sharing about the weather, helping people plan their days and their weeks out. you actually have looked to connect with audiences in a different way than we did 10 years ago by going on to TikTok, by going on to Instagram. So your audience now, you're having an impact that way. You're making ripples out that way that go far beyond the reach of any news camera audience, right? What was it that prompted you, Chris, to go that direction? And is that a common thing among meteorologists to really get active on social?
I appreciate that. Uh, well, I will start by saying, as somebody who is very active on TikTok and on Instagram, and I say this to anybody who is saying person, please don't get your news from that. I say that regardless of your political, your affiliation, whatever way, um, usually somebody who is on TikTok, is on social media, they usually have some sort of a narrative that they want, whether it's clicks, it's views, or it is swaying your opinion on certain subjects, whether it be political or not. They want to sway your opinion, or they want to make clicks or money off of you. Um, and I'm not saying that to bash TikTok. I'm not or Instagram. Again, I'm very grateful that it's given me an extra platform. But I say that local news is the most responsible way to get your information. It really is. And I know, there's no secret about the fact that there's been declining viewership over the years in local television. But I really want to emphasize the fact that I'm not just saying this because I'm an employee in local news. I just hope that's the way people get their information. It's the best way to get your context-driven information, and most importantly, the person behind the camera is not trying to sway your opinion one way or the other. There's the person in front of the camera as a producer, has an executive producer who is overlooking and trying. We're humans, we're imperfect, we don't always get it right, but we're trying to give you the best information to help you. In a democracy, in the way we live, right, in a free society, we need to have as fair of information as possible. And I know I'm going outside the realm a little bit here, but I say this to as many people as I possibly can. Please watch local news. And the reason, Dr. Hoven, this gets into why I got into TikTok, is I kept getting text messages from people being like, "Yo, is it going to snow 2 feet next week?" It's like, no, where'd you see that? And it'd be, hot garbage on TikTok. Weather boy 5942 would post some computer forecast model output on there. And I was like, all right, screw it. I'm going on TikTok. And I'm just going to go on it. I'm going to start posting. And thankfully, over the years, and by the way, for all what I said before, I also want to say it is a credit to viewership, I think, too, the fact that I've built up a following. What I try to do is make weather interesting, but also, of course, give you the most accurate, or the way I see it, the most accurate weather information available, right? That's what I'm trying to do. And clearly there's a market for that on social media. So that's also a credit to those of you who are on TikTok or on Instagram and just want a weather forecast. They'll want it to be saying it's going to snow 95 inches at my house next week because one computer model posted it, and some 18-year-old, with Cheetos on their mom's on their fingers posted it on TikTok, right? But the problem is that stuff goes viral. That's the issue. Is like people, especially right now. We're talking here on November the 20th, and it still hasn't snowed yet. So the only question I'm getting is it going to snow? 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 And so if you have a computer forecast model that says, hey, in 13 days it's going to snow, even though the odds of that happening are very, very slim, person behind that goes, ooh, I know that'll go viral. So they get posted, and it's going to get a lot of clicks and a lot of engagement. And that person's follower counts going to go right up. And I feel like my role, in a sense, is to be a bit of a, a peacemaker in that sense. Like, hey, look, that might happen, but it's probably not. So that's the reason I got on TikTok. And then honestly, I had a lot of success there. So I kind of migrated over to Instagram, and I'm starting to do the YouTube thing as well. And I think it's the best way to connect with audiences, to meet them where they're at. But again, I just hope that people watch local news to get their information, even if you have it on in the background, just as when I'm doing the weather forecast, on both TikTok and on TV. When I'm on TV, I have 4 or 5 minutes to talk about the weather. I can give you the context, like, hey, this storm's coming in from the south, but it comes a little further south. We might not get as much rain. We might not get as much snow. That's the advantage of local television, right? Is I can show you in maps in a pretty sophisticated form why, and adding context to things and giving you hopefully better information.
That's cool. Speaking of that kind of stuff, that got my mind working. What are some of the technologies that you've seen that are used in what you guys do as meteorologists over the last 15, 20 years that you've been doing this? How has that changed? Because I remember, back in the day, it was like, yeah, man, be a meteorologist. You only got to be right 50% of the time and you make full money, right? Like there was this kind of running joke between, meteorologists had a joke, chiropractors had a joke, lawyers had a joke, like all industries had a joke about them in some way. And the thing with meteorologists was, yeah, you don't have to be right very often and you're successful. I know that you guys have gotten better and better because of a lot of the tools. Can you describe some of the really cool technologies that allow you to do what you do, not only locally, but kind of worldwide and get trends of what's going on with temperature and moisture and all that kind of thing?
Yeah. So most of the you probably hear about computer forecast models, and we'll show that to you on television. Those have gotten more accurate over the years because what a computer forecast model is, I'm going to try and say this in as least nerdy of a way as possible, but it's basically a giant math equation that represents everything on Earth. So, um, Sloan's Lake to the 14,000 foot wall of rock, the Rockies behind us, that is all represented in a giant math equation, right? And the world's most powerful computers are the ones that ingest that and forecast that. They've gotten quicker at doing that, and also starting to take things into account. Like, for example, if you're on a Southwest jet and you're flying to California, that Southwest jet is also taking in weather data as it flies towards California, and that gets fed into computer models. That didn't used to happen. Now that gets fed in, and that means you're getting weather data from way up at 30,000 feet, or if that plane's taking off or landing, you're getting that information at 15,000, 10,000 feet. That also goes into the computer forecast model. So they're getting more accurate because you've got more data, right? But the final thing I'll leave you with here, Dr. Hoven, this is a really important point, which is exciting. But the big thing that's going to happen, I know AI is like the default conversation anything right now. It's like you go to a coffee shop, it's just like almost the new what's the weather? It's something, oh, AI or whatever. But AI, one of the things I think you're going to see very quickly is that AI is going to revolutionize weather because it's self-learning, obviously. So the point of artificial intelligence will be able to take weather. It is going to revolutionize weather very quickly here. Like within the next, you will see notable changes in the accuracy of your weather forecast within 5 years and most likely within 3 years. Um, Weather forecasts are going to get very good very quickly because of this, because of AI. So hopefully that makes sense that we've made some pretty good improvements the last 15, 20 years. That is going to rocket up. That is now an exponentially faster. I suspect within 5 years, we'll be doing 2 week forecasts. It's going to get that good, to be honest
Wow.
about it.
That's incredible. And that's where I was going actually. I was going to ask what role AI you thought it might play. And I think you've described that beautifully. Have you, as you've been seeing this, is there something that has connected you, Chris, the human, with you, Chris, the professional meteorologist, with respect to understanding when there's floods, when there's droughts, when there's hurricanes, when there's tornadoes, people's lives are affected? Has this in any way given you some sort of a cause personally that you use the weather to create a platform, or did it give you anything to go like, man, I really have a heart for people that are affected by these kind of weather patterns? Because I know that what'll happen is after a hurricane, whether you're watching a football game or whether you're watching a concert or whether you're watching something just random, all of a sudden you'll see banners. Hey, if you want to help, if you want to give some money to the Red Cross or to Salvation Army or to help with this, people want to move, and a lot of these things are based on weather, Chris, right? Like these crazy things, again, whether it's drought, whether it's hurricane, whether it's flood, they can lead to famine, they can lead to destruction, they lead to all this. Has there been any personal connection for you with those kind of things that help you drive your humanity?
That's a great question. I'll be honest about it, is that that's probably something I need to work on a bit more. But I will say that the kind of aspects where I've personally experienced that and where I've tied in would be after the Marshall Fire, so many pets were lost. Well, I believe it was over 1,000 pets were lost in the Marshall Fire. I do a daily fur cast, and I basically
Oh,
highlight a different.
Furcast. I love that.
Yeah,
Sorry to interrupt. Furcast, man. That's so brilliant. Okay, talk more about the Furcast.
yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, yeah. So it's a daily fur cast, and where I feature an adoptable dog or a cat, and that I don't know. I just if I talk about it too much, I'm going to honestly break down in tears because I have a dog. You've probably heard her a few times. She's going nuts outside right now. My apologies, but but I have a dog, and the thought of what happened at the Marshall Fire again, I can't get to talk, or I really will break down. That is so upsetting to me, um, and I want to. That's where I've felt the biggest connection from something with weather, where for whatever reason, and just being a dog owner and loving pets and loving animals myself, um, that really hit home for me. And I want to try and see if we can get as many dogs in homes as possible, as many cats in homes as possible. I think they're just such wonderful creatures, and um, that's my way. But I honestly need to do more. I also talked at length about being a Spanish speaker, so hopefully um, that will inspire other Spanish speaking kids uh, to get into this profession because we need Spanish speakers. We need bilingual meteorologists to communicate forecast hazards because Spanish communities are frankly underserved. They really are. There just aren't the resources, the stations, um, the government level at a private level. That they're just the resources we have as English speakers are not as available to Spanish speakers, and we've seen several times. For example, the Paducah, Kentucky tornado back in late 2021, around the time of the Marshall Fire, by chance, there was a tornado that ripped through an Amazon warehouse, and almost everybody who died was a Spanish speaker who didn't get the alert on their phone. Things like that. And yeah, anyways, those would be probably the two connection points, but I probably need to, in full transparency, work on doing more and finding more ways to get back. Because as I mentioned, I've had a pretty lucky, pretty blessed journey to be where I'm at. I woke up knowing what I wanted to do and woke up with one of the key tools to do it. And so I probably need to find a way to get back.
Well, it sounds like you're doing a really good job of it. And I will tell you this, my son, who has since passed away, but my son, when Katrina happened, he and his mama adopted a dog from Katrina here in Colorado, right? So what they had done is they had taken a bunch of the pups that were homeless that got stranded in that horrible disaster, and they didn't know where to rehome them. So Colorado was a natural feeder system, if you will. So dogs from Texas were coming up, dogs from uh, Louisiana, and all these places were coming up, and my son ended up getting one of those dogs, and that dog was the pride and joy of his life. He loved his name was
Mm-hmm.
Teddy, and he loved Teddy so much. And Teddy lived out his days here in Colorado. And after my son passed, he ended up going with my daughter and finished his days in Oregon on a beautiful farm in a wonderful way. But literally, it was only because of that connection between souls that wanted to help save animals, just like what yours is, Chris. That story happened and that it created such joy for that family. So again, just keep doing what you're doing. I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome. So to totally shift from where we're all going to cry here in a minute, when it comes to where things are going, have you noticed a lot of trends in weather? Obviously, we talk about climate change, global warming. This thing is taking different roles, different depending on the political climate of the time, what verbiage you want to use for it. Have you noticed it personally versus cyclical changes, right? We all know that we got averages and you got good times and bad times. Have you noticed anything since you watch this every single day with certain things with either temperatures or climate at the scope that you look? Maybe it's mostly locally. I don't know. I know that this is one of our lowest snowpack, can in equals low in snowpack compared to the last 39 years they've been measuring. I did hear that the other day. But in those same years, we got always rebounded into having more than average snowfall in those years. So, I'm just kind of interested in what you think about that, not as a political statement in any way, but just as a what you're seeing on the ground.
Yeah, no, and of course, yeah, happy to get into that. So I think there are impacts from a warming climate here in Colorado, and you can see it. The times of year you can really see it. I think there's a little bit of a misconception about it. So, for example, if it's 65 degrees and sunny in the middle of January, that might feel weird, but that's actually fairly normal. That we have downslope winds here in Colorado. That's happened hundreds of years, but thousands of years, as far back as records go. Um, it's just our geography that we get those days in the middle of winter. So often there's a bit of a misconception. It's like I say, hey, it's a beautiful day. It's 65 in January, and people go, no, like this is global warming. So I say, no. That's a downslope wind. That's what that is not a global warming. That is not the impact of a warming climate. What is that if you've lived, Dr. Hoven, how long have you lived in Colorado for?
Well, I'm 58. I was born here, lived here my whole life, except when I went to
Yeah.
St. Louis for my chiropractic training for 4 years. Other than that, I've been here.
Okay. Have you noticed how? Do you remember back in the 80s and 90s? We used to have some big honking snowstorms here in
Yes.
Denver in September. September, we would get them.
Yes.
September, we've had snow once in the last 25 years. October used to be, I mean, we've still, back 2019, for example, was a pretty snowy October, but in general, our snows really declined in September, October, April, and May. You might know that April is on average our second snowiest month of the year. So what's happening now, at least first along the Front Range, and I'll talk about the mountains in just a quick second, but basically the winter season for us used to be September till sometimes as late as Mother's Day, even beyond that. And now we're just kind of compressing it. So now it's more of I would call it almost a Thanksgiving to early to mid April. That's our winter now. Those shoulder seasons, September, I now call it August 2.0. September is now just an extension of summer for us. And we see that in the mountains as well. In the mountains, obviously, it's less compact because we still get snow all year round, but it's just not as robust. So that would be the big way you see the impact of warming climate. Now, what's interesting is that January and February have actually trended just a tad colder and a tad snowier, and that is likely due to the fact that we're seeing more intrusions of Arctic air in the middle of the season because the jet stream is weakening because the Arctic has warmed up so much. The jet stream is basically what evens out the much warmer temperatures down below, the much colder temperatures off to our north, and because of that warming that's going on in the Arctic, the jet stream is weakening, and so because of it, it's flimsier, so it moves down into the lower 48 more often. So we're seeing Arctic air in the middle of the winter more often because of that. So interestingly, January and February are actually a tad colder because of that, but every other month is notably warmer. And the 2 months where you've seen the biggest warming over the years have been September and November. And again, I always just go back to anybody who's been here for 30, 40 years in Colorado. Just think about how September, we used to have honking snowstorms. In fact, when the airport, Denver International Airport, first opened, I remember this last week of September, 1995, they had to shut down the airport because of a massive, massive snowstorm. And the reality is, those sorts of snow events probably don't happen now because it's just warmed. It's warmed, what, 3, 4 degrees now. And so what would have been a 32-degree snow is now 35-degree rain.
Wow. And you know what's so funny you say that, Chris? I was at the airport in that storm and they had built
Really?
DIA. They had said, hey, DIA, we have everything that money can buy, all the latest goodies. We're not going to have to close. And I was on my way to go take, I literally remember this, an acupuncture seminar. I was getting trained in acupuncture after I graduated and I had my postdoc stuff that I was going to go do. And I got stuck in the airport that night
No.
and couldn't get to that event. But yeah, so I remember that well. And I agree. The other thing I used to remember as a kid a lot more than I don't see anymore was, and I saw it more this year than I have in many, many years past, where in the early summer, right? In May and June, especially when I was a kid, I played tennis, competitive tennis. And we didn't have the money for me to be in an indoor club or anything. And so every day we would get these afternoon rains. And these afternoon rains would come in and they would leave. There would be a couple hours every day. When I was really small, they would shut the pool down because of lightning, and then it would go away, and then you would come back in the pool. And it would go for, it seemed to me like forever, because I'm on school break and I just want to be outside. But for weeks and weeks and weeks, you would have this event where there would be showers in the afternoon. It would be beautiful in the day. It never rained in the morning. It was showers in the afternoon, and then it would clear out in the evening. And I noticed for many, many years that we lost that kind of tempo of that kind of thing until this last season. I saw it much more than I had. So I don't know if you guys have seen that or if that's just my own observation, but that seems pretty interesting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. That is part of it. We what's going on is we're warming up and we're also drying out in general. We're seeing more dry years and extended droughts and just more extremes. So, for example, this month, we hit 83 degrees on November the 2nd, by far our warmest November temperature on record. I mean, uh, the fact that it was hot is not the warming climate, but the fact that it hit 83 instead of 80 or 81, that is, and that also gives us a bit more dry air. So I think, Dr. Hoven, to your point, that there is something to that.
Do you guys work with, that brings up kind of as we're winding this down, do you as weather folks work with other disciplines that are looking at these kind of potential challenges one way or another? Because I've heard on one side, hey, with all these changes, we're getting more intense storms, more intense hurricanes because of all this. Do you guys work with folks that are going to say, hey, if you're going to be drier, we got to fix our water accumulation systems so that we, especially for us here where we're a high desert, if we're not going to get the rain, we have to manufacture our ways to facilitate the good use of water. Does the weather community, do they connect with and work with these other communities to try to solve problems in advance of us experiencing them?
Absolutely. Up and a lot of it happens here in Colorado, by the way. In Boulder, you've got NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. You've got NCAR, National Center for Atmospheric Research, and they're not by coincidence in the same building as the National Weather Service office in Boulder. So weather, atmospheric research, and renewable energy research all in the same building in South Boulder. So there is a lot of close work. I will admit that I'm not super privy as to some of the technological advancements that are being made, but there are tons going on. And I know that they work kind of in concert in terms of how to figure out how to make right a lot of those problems that you mentioned.
That's awesome. Well, man, Chris, I could talk to you about this kind of stuff all day. I would like to finish this with just a little bit from your heart and soul with this question. Have you ever been given a piece of advice, something that was shared with you that you learned along the way that really has become the fabric of your foundation of how you live your life, and something that you would share with me as your friend that I can take on, and that with our audience and frankly with your audience about what makes Chris's life super impactful and profound, and maybe something that we could take from that?
I think one thing that I always got from my parents was a level of humility, and that would be I kind of had it in a tough way. I kind of mentioned my upbringing where I really didn't have. I kind of stunk at being a friend for a long time. I didn't have many friends until middle high school, and so I never take for granted that I have friends. That's a different story, but I kind of kicked my butt in a sense where um, I I don't. I think a lot of people, especially in my profession, I'm not the most successful people in my profession are people who um, see what we do as a potential source for good, and rather than ego, if that makes sense. Just being on TV in front of the bright lights, there can be egos involved. I have an ego. Everybody has an ego. Particularly in our line of work, it's a lot of A types, and that's not to conflate that. But I'm very fortunate, and I'm used to work with a lot of people who we all see that we have a platform to do good, and that comes from a source of humility. It's saying, I'm on TV, but that does not make me anything that special. And yes, people recognize me in the community. Honestly, it's cool. I like that. But that to me adds a burden of responsibility to do right by the community rather than um, lapping it up in a sense, if that makes sense. So it's be humble, work hard, and recognize when you get stuff wrong and learn from it for the future. So that's I wouldn't say that's a specific saying per se, but that's kind of how I was raised, having two immigrant parents who had to work for what they got um and in my case just not I don't know, not speaking the language and not having the same social upbringing that most kids had. It taught it to me too, and hopefully that will give everybody else the same idea as well.
I love that. Dude, this has been so good. Thank you so much for spending the time with me today. If people wanted to learn more about you, reach out to you, follow you on these various channels, how would they best go about doing that so they can learn more about you and follow your awesome work?
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's been super fun, Dr. Hoven. Thank you for having me on. I'm on TikTok at Weather Chris, WeatherChris. I'm on Instagram at Bianchi Weather, X, Threads, Blue Sky, and all the things. Meteorologist Chris Bianchi on Facebook. But also, if you want to reach out to me and you have a question, I'm super responsive on email, chris.bianchi@9news.com. So my first last name at 9news.com, chris.bianchi at 9news.com. And I will respond to you. I'm super responsive on email. So hopefully that helps.
That's great. No, this has been great. And I wish you nothing but success. We're going to be doing a lot more stuff together in the future. And I really appreciate you coming on, man. Keep bringing the good stuff to us in the way that you bring it. And also bring some snow with you, would you? We got Thanksgiving. We got the holidays coming up. So use your magic, use your powers to get some of the white stuff here in Denver.
I'll talk to Kathy. I'll talk to my people. We'll see if we can whip that up for you. But I appreciate it. Yeah, we need it. It's been a rough go, but it's been super fun. Thank you for thinking of me and having me on. And again, Chris Bianchi at 9news.com for all your viewers. I'm happy. I will respond and get back to you.
Look forward to it. Chris, be well, and we'll talk again soon, my friend.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.